Hi, I'm Tim Tedder. Welcome back to the Recovery Room, where we talk about real issues in affair recovery. Today's topic, understanding the motives behind an affair. Now, before we get to that, I want to invite you to a couple of opportunities. The first is an invitation to join our newsletter group. Now, listen, I don't like spam, so I don't want to send you any. My weekly newsletter offers encouragement and updates on the new resources for affair recovery, relationship healing, and personal growth. Sign up at affairhealing.com/newsletter or use the link provided in the episode notes. Secondly, I want to remind you that private coaching sessions are available with me, Sharon, or Jennifer, and we'd love to help you. All the information is available on our website, and I'll include that link in the notes for this episode as well. Over my years of counseling individuals and couples, I found that the motivations that drive most affairs fit into one or sometimes a blend of 6 main categories. Now, to be clear, I'm not talking about giving reasons that justify a decision to cheat. No excuse makes infidelity okay. But when we dig into the why, we often find that not all affairs are born from the same place. And that understanding matters because the path to healing may be different depending on the motive that drove the affair. Today, I'll walk you through each type, tell you what it looks like, share some examples, and consider how each motive informs us about changes that need to be made. Now, I typically use audio from real-life comments and interviews, but in this episode, I've used voice models to help illustrate the perspectives that are unique to each primary motive. You ready? Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Recovery Room, a podcast presented by affairhealing.com.
In this healing place, in this healing place.
The first motive can be seen in the alarm affair. This is when the affair acts as a distraction from relationship problems that should be addressed directly. Maybe marital disconnection, unmet needs, or growing resentment. But instead of facing the issues, the involved partner turns to something else, to someone else. Think of it like ignoring the smoke detector going off in your kitchen, and rather than figuring out what's burning, you decide to just walk outside and chat with a neighbor. Why do you think you did it?
I don't know. Things were just bad between us. Nothing seemed to change. I was looking for a distraction. That's all it was.
Several years ago, the media covered the story of a small-town mayor whose affair was exposed in leaked text messages. When asked why, he admitted that his marriage had been on, quote, life support for years. But he didn't want to go through the pain of addressing it. The affair became an escape, a way to feel alive again while avoiding the hard work of fixing the relationship. In my counseling and coaching, I've seen this pattern often. People in alarm affairs usually aren't too thrilled about the secrecy or having to live a double life, and they don't usually intend to leave the marriage. But to them, the affair was easier than the risks of facing the troubles at home. What risk could be so difficult, you ask? Well, for some, it's the risk of conflict that they typically try to avoid. For others, it's the risk of being emotionally vulnerable. The affair, in these cases, is an indication that something in the marriage should have been addressed. The exit affair. This one is more direct. The affair is actually the doorway out of the marriage. The involved partner already knows they want to leave, they just haven't taken the step. Sometimes the affair is a way to avoid being alone during the transition. Sometimes it's a form of self-sabotage to force the breakup.
Listen, our marriage was over a long time ago. I mean, I tried, but he wouldn't do anything. So I figured if he didn't care enough to love me, I'd find someone who would. That's what I did. I'm not sorry about it.
Years ago, actor Dennis Quaid once spoke publicly about his divorce from Meg Ryan, which came after her very public affair with Russell Crowe. Later, Meg admitted in interviews that her marriage had been, quote, broken for a long time before the affair ever happened. The affair, she said, didn't end the marriage. It just sped up what was already inevitable. Again, this is never a valid excuse to justify infidelity. I want to be so clear about that. But it's helpful to understand that in some cases, the affair is not the cause of the marriage's end. It's just a final act of someone who's already leaving the stage. If you're the betrayed partner in an exit affair, the painful reality is that your spouse was probably checking out of the marriage before the infidelity even began. The Quest affair. This one is less about external problems and more about the involved partner's personal search for something more or something different. This is also the kind of affair that typically comes out of what's commonly referred to as a midlife crisis. The Quest affair often happens in otherwise stable marriages, which makes it even more shocking for the betrayed partner. In fact, people in Quest affairs may have no criticism of their partner or their marriage at all.
You get to this place in life where you wonder what's really important. You question whether you're still important. I remember how things used to feel 20 years ago and wondered whether life would ever feel that exciting again, or is this just what happens? I wanted to believe I still had it, that women still saw me as someone interesting, desirable. I guess that need became strong enough, and I wanted to find out.
A few years ago, The Cut ran an essay by a woman who described having her affair during what she called a perfect marriage. She loved her husband, but felt a restless curiosity about other possibilities. The affair partner became a mirror for the self she thought she'd lost, a younger, freer version. Quest affairs can be disorienting because the betrayed partner is left thinking, well, if we were happy, if our marriage was good, then why would you do this? But happiness in the marriage doesn't erase unresolved longings inside of a person. Unfortunately, breaking trust to pursue a personal quest is a self-focused choice that breaks promises and sacrifices someone else's well-being while you look out for your own. The revenge affair. This one's usually easy to spot. It's done with the attitude, you hurt me, so I'm going to hurt you. Sometimes it's in response to a partner's affair, sometimes in response to emotional neglect or financial betrayal, or even public embarrassment. In 2022, a tabloid told the story of a woman who discovered her husband's affair and within a week had slept with his best friend. Now, she admitted it wasn't about attraction, it was about leveling the playing field.
I would have never cheated on him, but that didn't stop him from doing it first. I just wanted him to know what it felt like. I messed around with one of his friends because I knew it would hurt him, and it did. And I'm glad.
One problem with revenge affairs is that they rarely bring satisfaction. You may gain a momentary sense of power or even a feeling of justice, but the aftermath usually adds another wound to an already bleeding relationship. The impulse affair. This is the heat of the moment scenario, often a one-night stand, that has no prior romantic buildup. Alcohol, drugs, or high-stress situations can lower inhibitions and cloud judgments.
I know she's having a hard time believing me, but I swear I never meant to do anything with that other woman. We were just hanging out with a group at the end of a conference day, had too much to drink, and things got out of hand. And of course, the next morning I was full of guilt, but the deed was done.
This very scenario is something I've frequently come across. Clients who've been away on a business trip or attending a conference or some other out-of-town event talk about getting swept up in the moment. They reported not having any planning or forethought at all. But then, when they found themselves in those circumstances, they made a choice and felt the regret almost immediately. Impulse affairs often cause the deepest self-disgust for the involved partner because the decision feels so unintended and out of character. Yet the consequences are just as real. And then there's the habit affair. These are repeated affairs or serial infidelity patterns, often tied to a need for novelty, risk, or validation. Sometimes it's linked to sexual addiction, but not always.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to say. I can't come up with any more excuses, I know that. This is something I've done most of my life, even when I swear I'll do better. I just keep screwing things up.
Probably one of the most public examples in years past was Tiger Woods' public downfall. When the story broke in 2009, the sheer number of women involved revealed a long-term pattern, not a single bad decision. He later entered a treatment for sex addiction, acknowledging that he had a compulsive drive for new encounters. Habit affairs can devastate not only the marriages, but the unfaithful partner's entire sense of self-worth. Breaking that cycle requires more than just ending an affair. It requires deep, often long-term personal work. All right, so now you've heard the 6 motives for an affair. The next question is this: which one or which combination of them fits your situation? Now, if you're not sure, it's worth rewinding and listening to those descriptions again. Sometimes an affair starts out with one motive and morphs into another. For example, I've seen cases where someone began in an alarm affair, reacting to marriage problems, taking an easy out, and then that relationship shifted into a quest affair where they were in search of something more for themselves. But identifying the motive is just the first step. The real value comes from asking, why does it even matter now that the affair is over? And here's the answer. When you know what drove your decision to cross boundaries, you have a better idea of how to heal the damage and how to protect yourself from making the same mistake again. So let's walk back through each motive one more time, and I'll point out what each one tends to reveal about the recovery work ahead and what questions you should be asking yourself in each scenario. If an alarm motive drove your affair, it's a signal that something in your marriage was broken, and instead of repairing it, you turned away from it. So ask yourself these questions. What issues in my marriage really need to be addressed? Did I make genuine, consistent attempts to address them in a way that focused on change, not just blaming my partner? And here's the tough one. How did I contribute to the disconnection? Oftentimes in an alarm affair, a lot of focus and criticism has been directed towards the marriage or the marriage partner. Now it's time to ask, how did I contribute to the problems that were in my marriage? Until those questions are answered honestly, the alarm will keep going off. An exit affair usually means you'd already decided, at least in your heart, that the relationship was over. So the work now starts with clarity. And here's the questions you should ask. When did I first feel like I wanted out? Did I take steps to resolve the marriage first, like having hard conversations, or being actively and willingly involved in counseling, or even maybe initiating a separation for a while? Did I do any of those things before acting alone? And if not, why not? Do I still want the marriage to end? Am I being completely honest with my partner about that, or am I still just playing it safe? What would have been a better way to end my marriage? If you were in a quest affair, your work is often inward. You need to get clear about your answers to these questions. What was missing for me? How did the affair seem to meet those needs? Does it still? How am I going to measure satisfaction going forward? Is my standard based on other people's expectations? On circumstances I can't control? Or do they come out of motivations that come from my own core values? What story am I telling with my life right now? What story do I want to tell? What story am I going to be proud of or thankful for at the end of my life? Does the affair relationship help or hinder that story? And does staying in my marriage help or hinder that story? If yours was a revenge affair, it's time to take a close look at how you respond when you've been hurt. Ask these questions. Have I always handled unfair treatment this way, or was this a totally new reaction from me? How do I feel about that affair decision now? Which statement feels truer, an eye for an eye, or two wrongs don't make a right? Why? To be honest, do I see my affair as a betrayal? And if your answer is yes, answer this question. What steps am I going to take to repair the damage I caused? If it was an impulse affair, there's usually a specific set of circumstances that set the stage. So ask these questions. What was going on at the moment? Stress, alcohol, loneliness, something else? What was going on that made me vulnerable? Were there warning signs ahead of time that I ignored? And most importantly, what will I do differently next time to guard against this ever happening again? For you, it's about establishing better boundaries before the situation ever comes up again. Don't just determine to never cross that line. Figure out how to never get that close to the line again. And finally, if your affair was part of a habit affair, a repeated pattern, you probably already know this is going to take more than just a quick fix. Ask yourself these questions. When did this behavior start? And how has it been reinforced over time? Do I genuinely want to change? And am I willing to get help, professional help, accountability partners, whatever I need to make that change possible? Where will I start? When will I start? Because I want to tell you something. Without change, your pattern will keep repeating. Now, if you're listening as the injured partner, I know that understanding the type of affair doesn't erase the hurt, but it can bring clarity to the healing process and maybe help you make informed choices about the future. If you're the involved partner, recognizing your motive can point you toward the real issues that need to be addressed, not just in your marriage, but in you. One of the questions I often ask clients is, if you could send a message back in time, what would you tell yourself before the affair started? Most people say something like, don't do it. You think you know how this will go, but you're wrong. Affairs are always destructive, but the motives behind them can tell us a lot about what was missing or broken long before the lines were crossed. My challenge to you this week is to think about which category your story or your partner's story might fit into, and what that reveals about the deeper work that needs to happen. Thank you for joining me in the recovery room. And if you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone who might need to hear it, and be sure to subscribe for future episodes. I'll see you then.